Tonight, a return of some strict health rules to try to keep seniors safe.
So to largely be left on your own during these very difficult times there are no words.
We'll explain who is now banned from nursing homes as surging COVID cases also prompt some Ontario doctors to rethink isolation rules for everybody. Also tonight.
I mean, it does leave one emotionally distraught.
What a spiraling COVID situation means for loved ones in Ontario detention centres.
It's about keeping the flow of things going.
And the Toronto man propping up a scheme to save the environment and movie memorabilia. Hi there, I'm Chris Glover. This evening, the city of Mississauga decided to cancel its New Year's Eve events, including fireworks. The city citing the dramatic spread of COVID as it announced its decision. And Omicron-fueled spikes in infections are happening right across Ontario. The daily provincial tally did drop a bit for the second straight day, but the number of new cases still heavily outweighs anything we saw during the previous waves of this pandemic. So let's get to the numbers. The province is reporting just over 8,800 new infections today. 491 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19. That's up slightly from the 480 reported yesterday. 187 people are in ICU. That number was 176 yesterday. And sadly, 7 more COVID deaths are also being reported. And with prominent events continuing to be canceled or postponed, today an eagerly awaited update from the province's top doctor was also called off. Officials are reviewing guidelines around isolation in light of changes in the United States. Yesterday, the isolation time for Americans with COVID-19 was slashed from 10 days down to just 5. Talia Ricci begins our coverage tonight with a closer look at whether that could happen here.
For some who work on the front lines, news of a shorter isolation period in the U.S. brings relief.
Yeah, I must say I was quite excited to see this.
On Monday, the CDC cut isolation restrictions for Americans with COVID-19 from 10 to 5 days if they don't have symptoms, and also shortened the time that close contacts need to quarantine.
This will change the landscape for many frontline staff, a lot of healthcare providers, because, you know, the isolation period can really diminish a workforce.
The Ministry of Health says officials here are currently reviewing this guidance alongside Ontario-specific evidence. The head of the province's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table says solutions are needed to avoid a shortage of frontline workers, but he also remains cautious.
To be honest, 5 days I find very short, but we will need to find pragmatic solutions, you know, because life will need to continue. We will have a shortage of essential workers, not only in hospital, but really everywhere.
In Ontario, as Omicron cases surge, testing centres continue to be overwhelmed and residents are racing to get their boosters. Today, the Premier toured a vaccine site in Mississauga.
We had a couple slow days at Christmas, but we're world-class when it comes to vaccine rollouts. We'll be hitting up to, our goal is 300,000 a day.
The head of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario says if these isolation guidelines do make their way to Ontario, she wants them to include negative PCR tests.
Not everything that the US has done has really delivered good outcomes. Here in Ontario, it seems, is accommodating to the virus rather than trying to restrict and suffocate and squash the spread of the virus so we can buy time. Because if your number continues to grow, the ICUs will be full.
If there is a rise in hospitalizations, Dr. Karamantain says measures that would help bolster the healthcare system would be a step in the right direction.
Many hospitals are having general staffing issues with burnout, with positive COVID cases, with close contacts. So, you know, we want to be able to have all hands on deck.
An update is expected from the province this week on isolation guidelines, and with classes set to resume next week, the Premier says there will be an update on schools in the coming days. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
And while parents await that important update around what's happening with Ontario's schools, today the government announced significant changes for nursing homes. Greg Ross has the details on who's still allowed in and who is not.
COVID-19 cases are on the rise in long-term care facilities across the province. Minister Rod Phillips says there are now 41 locations dealing with outbreaks.
93 residents and 161 staff have tested positive for COVID-19. And as of today, there are no long-term care residents in hospital as a result of COVID-19.
But even if hospitalizations remain under control, Phillips says it's time to take action to ensure it stays that way.
Effective December 30th, this Thursday at 12:01 a.m., all general visits to long-term care homes will be paused, unless you're visiting a resident in a palliative situation. As well, social visits from homes will be paused.
Phillips says these measures are to enhance other protections put in place earlier this month.
We required all long-term care staff to be fully vaccinated by December 13th, and earlier this month required everyone who is visiting a long-term care home to be fully vaccinated.
That mandate is just 2 doses, which we now know very clearly is insufficient for protection from Omicron.
This palliative care physician was hoping to see a much stronger push from the government when it comes to booster shots in long-term care facilities.
And right now in Ontario, we still have over 9,000 long-term care residents who have not received that crucial 3rd dose, which is required for protection from Omicron. And only 43% of the long-term care staff have received their 3rd dose.
We continue to work hard to increase the numbers, and we're working with labor partners, operators, and others, including public health units, to make sure that we raise the number of 3rd doses.
Some in the long-term care field say a stronger vaccine mandate wasn't the only issue that fell short today.
Things like daily rapid testing of staff. Right now, the mandate is only for 2 times a week. That is problematic. That will let cases slip through the cracks, which will then lead to larger staff shortages than need be.
This long-term care advocate says the government seems to be taking a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach. And in the end, it's long-term care patients and their families that will pay the price.
It's heartbreaking. There's no question about it. So to largely be left on your own during these very difficult times there are no words.
Phillips says residents can still designate 2 caregivers that will be allowed to visit, and they can still leave facilities for essential reasons like medical appointments. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Long-term care homes aren't the only provincial facilities that have suffered with outbreaks during this pandemic. Detention centers have as well. And today, outside Toronto's East End Detention Centre, people rallied for better conditions for their loved ones being held inside. Dahlia Ashry takes a look at what they're calling for.
No justice, no peace. The cold didn't stop Rachel Chen and dozens of other people from rallying outside Toronto's East Detention Centre this afternoon. They're concerned for the well-being of their loved ones inside the facility.
It does leave one emotionally distraught.
Because of COVID restrictions, she hasn't been able to make an in-person visit to her loved ones at provincial detention centres. Chen says detainees have limited accessibility and she can only communicate over the phone, making this holiday season especially difficult.
They're only let out possibly every 3 to 5 days or so for a shower program. And during that time, they're in a predicament where it's, do I run to the shower first or do I run to the phone first?
On December 2nd, Toronto Public Health declared a COVID outbreak. A staff member and 4 inmates tested positive for the virus.
The life-saving measures that we use in the community are looked at as safety threats and security threats inside.
Lindsay Jennings is one of the organizers of today's rally. She says some inmates are currently on hunger strike to bring attention to what's happening inside. Jennings says they are being overbunked, meaning no social distancing, and don't have access to appropriate resources.
Do not have open access and free access to any sort of PPE, cleaning supplies, sanitizer.
The Ministry of the Solicitor General says it's working with local public health units, determining things like isolation and testing requirements, and said staff and inmates have masks accessible to them. Plus, if an inmate tests positive, the ministry says that person is isolated.
Lockdown basically 24 hours a day, sometimes weeks at a time, especially if you're in a droplet precaution unit or if you're on quarantine because you've come in contact with somebody with COVID, you are experiencing conditions of solitary confinement inside.
As for Chen, she wants to see the government take action moving forward.
Decarceration, that's the primary focus. Access to PPE masks. That's a huge concern as well.
Meanwhile, she's worried about the mental health of her loved ones living inside. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
The NHL has postponed another round of games because of teams dealing with COVID outbreaks and COVID restrictions. The Sens game against Pittsburgh on Friday will be rescheduled. Same for the Leafs game against the Hurricanes on Monday. The league says a number of games are being postponed between December 31st and January 10th due to current attendance restrictions. As the demand for testing surges across the province, officials in Windsor, Essex are struggling to keep up. There are limited slots available between now and the weekend, and a private lab is ramping up its capacity in response.
We're fully booked. All our appointments are being snatched up right away. We've got some availability for walk-ins, and we're seeing a demand for that. We're seeing a lot of concerned patients, and especially with the holidays, very concerned about either, getting COVID or passing COVID. Omicron's another big concern because it's so transmissible.
The company has already started adding more slots for the week, extending capacity by around 35% at all 4 of its locations. Meanwhile, an official at Windsor Regional Hospital says demand is high at the assessment center there and resources are stretched thin. The hospital says it's waiting to see if there will be any changes from the province this week around who can be tested and who can't. To Vaughan now, where the city is closing many of its facilities because of staffing shortages caused by COVID.
Doesn't make us happy that we are limited in what we can do, but we'll find alternatives, and we've done it once, we'll do it again, and hopefully this is the last of it.
We need to pay attention to the employees. The swimming instructors, the lifeguards, I mean, they're great. The staff at the community centers, at the fitness centers, they're our lifeline right now, really.
They certainly are. And as of this Thursday, in-person recreational programs at all community centers in Vaughan will be temporarily canceled until further notice. Fitness centers, swimming pools, and libraries will be closed. The city says it'll offer a variety of virtual classes and programs beginning January 15th. Looking live at Toronto's skyline, and a mixed bag of precipitation falling in the city tonight as the temperature hovers around 0. Let's get straight to Celeste DeCare for a first look at your weather picture. Hey, Celeste, just a bit of snow to talk about tonight.
All right, well, tonight in Toronto and surrounding regions, you can expect just a couple centimeters of snow overnight tonight. That should clear up early tomorrow morning. As for tomorrow, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud, but come the evening, there is a system making its way through that could bring some rain, some snow, possibly a mix to Toronto and surrounding regions. Nothing too intense, though. Now we are looking at a mild week ahead until this weekend, where that pattern will shift back to those winter temperatures, rather. So don't get too comfortable with those mild temperatures. All right, here's a look at your storm tracker overnight. There you can see just a little bit of snow over Toronto. It'll start to make its way out early tomorrow morning. As for the afternoon, early morning Wednesday, mix of sun and cloud, possibly a chance of those returning showers. Very light over the region. Ottawa mainly cloudy come the evening. Same with surrounding regions. So the evening's looking relatively clear. Now just a quick look ahead at tomorrow. Overnight tonight, a low of 0. A couple centimeters of snow there. And tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud with a high of 1. When we come back, I'll have your full 7-day forecast.
All right, thanks, Celeste. In Mississauga, a man is dead after being struck by a vehicle this morning. The call came in around 7:30 a.m. for a pedestrian struck near Dundas Street East and South Creek Road. The man was transported to a trauma center where he was pronounced dead. The driver remained on scene, and police are continuing that investigation.
Raptors down by 2. Gary Trent Jr. for the lead. The 3. From Westwood Hills.
Well, it looked like the Raptors' luck had turned late in tonight's game against the 76ers, but no dice. Philadelphia would make a comeback. The 76ers beating Toronto 114-109. Toronto's roster was a little more intact tonight. 5 more players cleared COVID protocols, but 5 still remain sidelined. The Raps were led in their performance by Chris Boucher and Pascal Siakam, who just returned to the team.
We're going to finish with 4, Connor. That's it. What an afternoon, what an evening for Connor Bedard.
And a pretty easy win on the ice for Team Canada in the World Juniors tonight. Our boys beating Austria handily with a score of 11-2. 16-year-old Connor Bedard scoring 4 of those goals for Canada, and the team will take on Germany tomorrow. Some sad news now from the world of sports. John Madden, one of the most recognizable names to ever come out of American football, has died. The NFL confirming tonight Madden died at home unexpectedly at the age of 85. He was a Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame coach turned broadcaster. The name Madden, also known prominently in the world of video games. He lent his name to EA Sports for the NFL's licensed video games. Madden retired from TV commentary in 2008 after being an analyst for 4 decades. All right, looking now live at the city this hour, and we can actually see the CN Tower tonight. Certainly an improvement over what we were looking at last night, and another pretty mild one for so late into December. Celeste is back with a look at the long-range forecast. Celeste, not too much active weather tonight.
So just a couple flurries in Toronto and surrounding regions this evening, but that system will make its way out of the region early tomorrow morning. Let's just give you a quick look ahead of what your day is looking like tomorrow. So by 7 a.m., those flurries will have been pushed out of the region, mainly cloudy conditions, but that will change come afternoon. A little mix of sun and cloud in there. Around the afternoon or to the evening, looking at cloudy conditions again, 3-degree high for most of the day. It'll drop down to about 1 come the evening. Now let's take a look at your 24 weather outlook ahead. Snow in surrounding regions in Toronto this evening. Overnight, you can see it sticking around for most of the region. Now, just a couple centimeters there. Overnight, it'll start to clear out, though, so we'll be in the clear tomorrow morning. Looking like some sunny breaks for Toronto and Ottawa, although it's hidden just behind that little banner there. Windsor, same deal. And then into the afternoon, cloudy conditions again persisting, possibly some light showers scattered throughout the region there, and tomorrow evening. There you go. And then here's some rain totals for you. Parts of the region there into tomorrow morning, what you kind of can expect. Winds are around 3, London 3, Toronto 6 millimeters. So a little bit of a wet overnight for Toronto and surrounding regions there. Now as for your wind gusts, nothing too intense, quite a calm evening actually into early tomorrow morning. Nothing getting above 40, 45 kilometers an hour for your winds. So relatively calm evening and into tomorrow. Here's your 7-day forecast tomorrow. A mix of sun and cloud, a high of 3, 40% chance in the evening that those scattered showers and rain could return. Thursday, some light scattered flurries, a high of 3. Friday, mainly cloudy conditions with a high of 4. Saturday, quite mild, but going to be quite wet. So expect to bring out, that umbrella, that raincoat perhaps. It's going to be quite wet. Sunday, mix of sun and cloud. Those temperatures, as you can see, will start to drop as we move into the new year. So again, don't get too comfortable, all right? Make sure that parka is in reach. That's it for your weather. Stay warm, stay safe, and have a wonderful evening.
All right, parka is close by. Thanks, Celeste. We first told you last night that the cast of Come From Away had played its last show in Toronto, and tonight we're hearing about that disappointment from fans and from those involved in the production. As Ali Chiasson reports, the company blames a lack of a financial safety net for the arts.
As soon as lockdown started, I thought I would make a bucket list of what to do after COVID.
Ladies waving from the dock.
One of the first things on that bucket list for theater buff Maria Papadopoulos was to finally see the production of Come From Away.
So as soon as tickets opened up again on November 15th, I think it was, I purchased my ticket for today, and that was before Omicron hit.
To the ones who've left, you never truly got.
The show has been canceled, not indefinitely either, permanently.
We looked at everything and we said, it costs so much money to restart the show, and we're not going to make any of it back, and we may not even make back the costs of running the show weekly.
Venues like the Royal Alexandra Theatre need to operate at 75 to 80% capacity just to break even. And unlike other industries, commercial theatre companies don't qualify for wage subsidies. That's because cast and crew are mostly independent contractors, not employees of the theatre. Mervish Production says the industry badly needs a safety net.
Every commercial theatre production in the United States was given $10 million. The federal government of the United States realizes that commercial theater is an important sector of the economy.
The Tourism and Culture Minister's office says theaters are eligible for the Ontario Tourism Recovery Benefit, but that money won't come until sometime in the new year, and that's hard to plan shows around.
It's unusual probably to hear the union leader talk about the problems for the bosses, but I have profound empathy for the theaters in this country who don't know whether or not they can go forward with a production. You are here at the side of a...
You're looking at months of preparation, weeks of rehearsals, not to mention the cost of sets, storing them, refurbishing them, costumes, and operating costs.
All of those costs are up front. And there's no guarantee, of course, that audiences are going to come.
Come From Away won't have an encore, but as soon as things do stabilize, there's one person theaters can count on being in the audience.
Yeah, it is very important that we keep the arts alive, especially during this time.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Finally tonight, have you ever wondered what happens to all the props used in your favorite movies and TV shows? Well, the man we are about to introduce you to may have an answer.
Rather than throwing materials into the bin, okay, click, take a picture of it, post it on the website. If you're selling it, we take a commission, but if you're just giving it away, which we encourage, post it on the website and we'll push it for you. It's about keeping the flow of things going.
Grant Heggie runs Ready, Set, Recycle. It's an organization that encourages people within the film industry to sell or give away old props. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Shannon Martin has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. Have a great night.